say has HIC positively impacted the Jamaican economy to date? And how does the clinic approach sustainability and avoid obsolescence?
Well, excellent. Because part of the challenges you're going to face is when you start doing something like this, then you begin to look into capital formation. How do you know, marshal enough capital to set up an institute that can deliver these services? Well, the common thinking, the traditional thinking to third world is that it has to be charity. If it is not charity, most of the routine people, most of the traditional sources of funding are not interested. The problem is that charity is not sustainable in the long term. What is sustainable is to creating a socially conscious investment vehicle that recognizes that there is no equity in income distribution. And so you have to come with a creative way to make sure that no one is turned away just because of inability to pay. And what we have done at the Heart Institute is to create a tiered pricing structure where those who can afford to pay the full price, which by the way is still only about 10 to 20% of what they're flying over to Miami to pay, those individuals can pay the full price. And then those individuals who are fully indigent can pay little or nothing. And we do a lot of patients who are fully indigent that cannot pay anything. Now, the problem is that you have to manage this very carefully, because you will also have individuals who will have the ability to pay but do not want to pay. Because for one, they have been fed a daily dose of charity that everything has to be funded from somewhere. Those individuals, fortunately, are not in the majority, but they are there. They're quite significant. So you have to manage that. The key thing is once you have a program in place and you have policies, you have a means test, and you train your staff well so that you are not, it's not a top-heavy decision-making process. I have billing clerks that can assess individuals and determine their ability or inability to pay, and will assign them the appropriate category. And that has worked quite well. Now, you also choose your equipment very carefully, because you want to use equipment that can withstand the power fluctuation situations in developing countries. Most of our equipment, we have to pick multimodality units that can do more than one thing. It comes from our understanding of the medical equipment side of what we do. We also have to recognize that the latency in power distribution, the power fluctuation, the voltage regulation issues. And so we bring engineers in to work with us to create voltage suppression units that will make sure that our equipment is protected, because that is one thing that can drive you out of business fairly quickly. You bring in an equipment and within 2 days, it is gone because of power fluctuation issues. So these are the things that we understand and we deal with them. The point of the matter is that they can be dealt with. You have to understand what issues are. But what is not acceptable is to resign yourself to what somebody else has said, that because you have these fundamental problems, you should not aspire to give to your people what modern medicine can afford.
You know, as you mentioned that, I'm thinking you venturing into the Caribbean, coming from Nigeria, studying United States and so on, there's a different mindset. And you mentioned the legacy of colonialism. And I wonder, what was your greatest challenge in setting up this clinic? But not only that, in dealing or helping to transform the mindset so that it can work, there can be some synergy between your employees and the clinic.
Well, it's like I said, this is a journey that we got into with our eyes wide open. Mm-hmm. We did not expect that it will be easy. If it was, it would have been done, right? Now, here is the problem, and I will say that this is probably not just a problem of Jamaica. It is a problem of the developing world, right? I talked about courage. First of all, having the courage to make a difference, then you can practice the other virtues. Now, I will dare say that you can modify that to say courage without confidence is not going to lead you anywhere. Courage without belief is not going to lead you anywhere. One of the things we're lacking in the developing world, and I think it's from years of colonialism and mental enslavement, is that many of our people just do not believe that we can. So we have this mental block that tells us that we're not capable of doing it. You know, I will tell you that somebody, a very important person, said to me when we had a meeting to see if we can get some support for this, his whole mindset was to see if I can use my influence to get Cleveland Clinic to come and build a facility in Jamaica. My retort was very terse and direct. I said to him, it is called Cleveland Clinic for one reason, because the people of Cleveland built it, and that is in Cleveland. We should be talking about building Kingston Clinic, and we don't need the people of Cleveland to come and do it. So it's overcoming that mindset. And that mindset is so pervasive that you will find it at the lower level, at the mid-level, at the highest level. And so even when you're talking with people, when we built the Heart Institute, in all my meetings, years later, some people that could have been helpful to us confided in me that they never believed it was possible. And these were people you will look at and think they should know better. And that is the problem, is the mental enslavement, the colonial mindset that we find in many developing societies. That is one of the biggest obstacles to development that we see. That's number one. The next one is because of the same mental enslavement, the worldview is clouded about who is capable and who is not capable. If you look a certain way, in their mind, you couldn't get it done. They're looking for somebody who looked a certain way because that is the way their mind has been warped over time. But it is changing. There are a lot of young people that are rejecting those, stereotypes that we can help ourselves. We don't need saviors from elsewhere to come and save us. We can save ourselves. Hey, we are saving people all over the world. If you look around the United States, you're going to see Jamaicans doing fantastic, great things.
Yes.
If you look around Europe, you're going to see Jamaicans, you see Nigerians doing great things. Why is it then that when you come inside Jamaica or Nigeria or Ghana, then somehow the same people who are doing great things all over the world are convinced that they're not capable of great accomplishments? And that is what we reject, and that is what we're trying to change.
I feel almost foolish to ask you if you ever had any doubts, but I'm only asking you this because part of my audience are other doctors, and I really believe in this concept, and I believe that you're doing a great job selling it. But I want to ask you this question. If we were to take the position that we do not choose ideas, ideas choose us.
Right.
Can you explain why you, Dr. Madu, what do you have, and what is it in your character and personality that such an innovative but demanding idea would choose you?
Some people who are, I guess I would say I'm persistent, right? I have convictions, and I'm confident, and I have courage. I believe that I can do what I set out to do. Now, those who are less charitable will say I'm very stubborn, right? And in this case, I think that stubbornness, I will wear it as a badge of honor. We have no doubt that we can change things because we understand the way you can take technology. Now, let me tell you something, right? One of the things I encounter that I said to people, we're not ready for this. That is the kind of thing, or this kind of technology can't work here because that is too advanced. My comment was, it is like telling somebody that you cannot use email because we're in Jamaica. We just have to stick to telegrams and writing letters. The world is changing, and we have to embrace that change. The way you embrace the change is to recognize advances in science and technology and then find how you can innovate those advances to solve existing problems and solve emerging problems. The work we're doing, the technology to do the work we're doing has been existent in the West for so long. But there are also people who have gotten comfortable with the life that is good, and there's a lot of wastage taking place because nobody has been challenged to innovate and make a difference. And that is where we use technology, for example, to break down barriers so that you can improve access to care across nations, access to care across communities. And this is one of the things I'm going to be speaking about later in the year when I'll be speaking in Singapore, the National Development Summit for Singapore. Now, to think that we have people in advanced societies looking at what we're doing, saying, come to us and help us understand how we can do better. And yet, in our own societies, we have self-doubts. I was in the United Kingdom in April, speaking to an international audience. We had about 4,300 people attending. And in my lecture again was talking about how you use technology to break down barriers and extend care to rural communities. This can be done. We're already doing it. We have telecardiologists scattered all over the world contributing to the care of patients in the Caribbean. These patients are not paying 1 cent more for that. But these are specialists that they could not afford to ever have the opportunity to see. But we have used technology to break down barriers so they can use telemedicine to see those patients, take care of those patients, provide quality assurance to what we're doing. And yet, we don't have confidence in ourselves. One of the things we're hoping is that we're going to shatter all of those kind of thought processes to say we have to believe because we're capable. If we believe because we're capable, then we'll have the courage and we'll have the passion to drive our mission through.
What was the reaction like when you first proposed this concept to other physicians? And what about the government of Jamaica and Nigeria?
I say it's an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm.
I say one of the things is that when people have these preconceived notions that are formed over time, it is, change is a very frightening concept.
Yes.
When you propose something that looks like it's too radical, it changes the way things are done. People get afraid because you're going to take them out of their comfort zone. And you're going to see several reactions. And those were the reactions we saw. You're going to see individuals who are excited because they never knew they will ever witness this kind of change. They will embrace you, but they don't have much to do to help you along, but they will give you moral support, which is good. Mm-hmm. You're going to have individuals who just don't want anything to change because the status quo has been good for them. They have been comfortable in that life for so long. They're neutral, but they don't want any change. Then there are people who feel so frightened and so threatened. Those are the most dangerous elements. And they will go out of their way to block that change, even if that change will save their lives. They will become so blinded by trying to defend, in quote, their way of life. They do not want that change because it will disrupt the natural order of things. Those are the most dangerous elements. They will go to every length to try to block you. And we're still dealing with them. They don't disappear. They will go quiet for a minute, but they are the ones who are going to be singing to the authorities that these things are not needed in Nigeria or Jamaica or Ghana or wherever. They are the ones that will sing to the authorities that it is better to put some fund away to send people to India or to London or to Germany or to US for treatment. These individuals are there and do not ever think that they're going away, and they can't help themselves. They believe they have as much passion as we have, but I'm sorry to say their passion is misdirected because they're impeding development process.
Let me go to the chat room for a second. Patrick said, good evening to you and your guests. Is there a link or commonality between diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease?
Yes, that is very well understood now. Diabetes and hypertension. The question was diabetes and hypertension, right?
Yes, diabetes and hypertension.
Yeah. Diabetes and hypertension are two of the strongest promoters of cardiovascular disease. And, diabetes, again, and hypertension are also linked to overweight and obesity epidemic. So that's a global trend. And then let me talk about diabetes for a minute. Right now, it is estimated that we have probably about 1 billion people around the world that are overweight or obese. Many of those individuals are at risk for developing diabetes. The projection is that by 2025, we're going to have maybe 350 million diabetics around the world. Now, the frightening statistics is that 70% of those diabetics will be in developing countries of the world. What does that mean? Diabetes is a very strong risk factor for cardiovascular disease. In fact, in cardiology, we now recognize diabetes as heart disease equivalent. So if you have diabetes, it is very likely that you have coronary artery disease developing in one stage or another. Now, when we're talking about 350 million diabetics around the world and 70% of those are in developing countries, then you can see what epidemic of cardiovascular disease we're looking at in the next several years to come. If we take Jamaica, for example, that data is about maybe 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 people, adults, have diabetes. Now, we're seeing more diabetes in young people as well. Among overweight teenagers, you have about 20% of them developing type 2 diabetes, which is not something that we have seen in the past. So if you take that and then see that in Jamaica again, you have about 20 to 30% of people have hypertension. So you have 25% of people with diabetes, 20 to 30% with hypertension, adult population, and then you have about 4 out of 10 men that are overweight or obese and 6 out of 10 women that are overweight or obese, then you can see the perfect storm for cardiovascular epidemic. And we're seeing it. Now, we don't have the capacity in Jamaica still to deal with the extent of the problem because we don't have the capacity in terms of human capital, in terms of resource capital, resource allocation. Then we have to find creative and innovative ways to deal with this problem. Those creative and innovative ways have been what we have been pioneering at the Heart Institute of the Caribbean. We're doing a lot of community programs to get word out to the community. We're doing a lot of things to bring early screening in place. We're starting a chest pain service, and we're starting a 24-hour emergency hotline that will allow people to come in at any time in a 24-hour period of time with active problems, and our interventional cardiologists will address the problem because that is what saves lives.
And Patrick, again, you were right. Colonialism bred insecurity and dividends. And Sydney asked, what do you think made you so confident and so forward-thinking?
I don't know. I will say God.
If you had the ears of all the heads of CARICOM for 1 minute, and what if they ask you, can it be done? Can it be sustained? And what would you want them to know about what you're doing in Jamaica and Nigeria?
Well, my answer to them will be to say, can it be done? Yes. How do I know? Because we have done it. The next one, can it be sustained? Yes, it can be sustained. We've done it. It's 10 years, and we are sustainable.
What do you say to those who refuse to acknowledge the advantages of technology and that it is here to stay?
Well, I think, for those who refuse to acknowledge the advantages of technology, I will hope that it is just ignorance, that when they're properly educated, then they will understand. I'll give you a few simple examples. So we are talking now. You are 1,000 miles away. I'm in a different location, and we're having this conversation, and it is streaming, and people from different parts of the world could go in and listen to the conversation and be part of the conversation. That is technology making a difference. We couldn't do this 30 years ago. Do we say then that this is not useful? Information is moving at the speed of light. All the young children that are in their teenage years now, they communicate with their friends all over the world. When I was a teenager, we used to write letters. You write a letter and take it to the post office and then wait for 2 weeks for the letter to get there and then wait for another 2 weeks to get a response. Sometimes you don't. Then you don't know if the letter ever got there. How do we do it now? We get on WhatsApp and send a message and we know right away. We get on BlackBerry Messenger. We do texting. We do Skype. We do all kinds of things. That is technology. Now, what we're saying is that we can also take these advances in technology and bring it to healthcare. And that is what we have done very successfully. We have our own portal for telemedicine consultations where individuals can sit at home and dial in and select a doctor and then set up a telemedicine consultation. Some of these individuals are not able to get out of home. Cell phones have been in use for many, many years. Now, what cell phones have been used to do in Africa has been different from what is used to do in the West. We have millions of people that are not banked at all. Now, M-Pesa in Kenya turned it around, and all of these people can use the cell phone to transfer money, mobile money movement. That is use of technology. Now, there are some countries where individuals that are opposed to technology are still convincing their leaders and their government that they do not need to embrace technology. And those countries are going to lag far behind. If you are not moving forward, you're going backwards. If you're standing still, you're moving backwards because the rest of the world is going to be moving and you're going to be caught standing still.
Romeo asked, how do you know who is the right match for your team? And how do you get them to work as one unit to carry out your passion?
That's a very, very good question. In the beginning, we were looking for people who were smart and could be trained in one thing or another. And we made some mistakes, some false starts, but we learned. Now, what do we look for now? What we look for now is passion, commitment, and loyalty. Those are the three things that matter the most. The number of degrees you have don't mean anything to us. We don't care, because if you have commitment, you will have dedication. If you're loyal, you will be loyal to the cause. If you're passionate, you're going to put your effort into learning it. And I will tell you that after some missteps, we have a team at the Heart Institute of the Caribbean now that I tell people I think we have the best team in all of Jamaica. I don't think there is any workforce in any organization in Jamaica that beats the workforce we have at the Heart Institute of the Caribbean now. What do they have in common? Is commitment and passion. Our team is so dedicated to our goal. They're so passionate about what we're doing that it's not passion, is not something you can teach somebody. It's an internally driven thing. It comes from within. It's either you have it or you don't have it. If you don't believe, then you're looking for a paycheck. Then when the wind is rough, you're looking for an exit. Fortunately for us, we learned that what is most important is to find individuals who are loyal, committed, and passionate. And that is what our focus is. Once they have it, we believe the rest of the things we can mold.